Devin, good morning to you. Suddenly it's quiet behind you. What is going on?
Well, no, protesters, Koli, good afternoon. Protesters here in full force. But of course, 10 a.m. is gone. That was the ultimatum given by the Please Call Me movement for the Vodacom management to come outside, accept a memorandum of sorts, and agree to pay the inventor of the Please Call Me, Nkosana Makate. That didn't happen. We've had the address now by some of those protest leaders saying, well, they will roll out a plan of action. And they're actually standing right behind the camera here. That's where the gates are. They say they will roll out this plan of action. What does it include? Well, they will encourage most of their supporters and most of the public base to cancel contracts of Vodacom. They want big sponsored events also off the charts from Vodacom. I speak about the July Handicap, for example. They want government to actually remove their relationship with Vodacom in whatever sponsorship or whatever contract form they have amongst the employees. And again, of course, go in with a national campaign to actually, what they say, expose Vodacom for what it has done to this particular inventor. But I have with me Duncan McLeod here from Tech Central. He's the editor. Duncan, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. I mean, it was inevitable that Vodacom would have not come out this morning. They've said the entire week they rest their case on the Constitutional Court judgment, which basically said, yes, we agree that there was a verbal relationship, a binding one, that committed Vodacom to actually having to agree that they did form some sort of a relationship. The consequence of that, please call me, in terms of profits, they say in the Constitutional Court judgment must have been billions. But at the end of it, it says that it leaves up the final decision of the amount paid, and that's what under question here, to the Vodacom CEO. And I guess that's where it all ends, and that's where Vodacom is saying we're not coming out because we're just following the judgment.
Yes, it's not clear at all whether Nkosana Makate has any further legal recourse here. We know he's spoken to his lawyers and said he's going to consider his options, and I suppose there's an option of going back to the Constitutional Court once again and saying that he's not happy with the settlement. But it's far from clear whether the Constitutional Court is going to hear this. I mean, they issued a final ruling, and they said that if the parties couldn't reach agreement, which they couldn't, then it's up to the Vodacom CEO, currently Shamil Jusub, to determine what he believes is a fair compensation for Mr. Makate, which he's now done.
And I guess what makes this complex to digest? I mean, here you have a public base which clearly on social media supports the underdog. We can understand how that gained traction for obvious reasons. But there are question marks, and here are the three big ones. One, we do not know how much Nkosana Makate was offered by Vodacom. We do not know what should be the reasonable amount. And, of course, we just don't know on what basis that can change. So the public in large is not very clear with figures. And, Duncan, I want to put this to you. Was there any case in the past where we can actually figure out what would be a convincing, fair amount to be offered to Makate?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and I certainly haven't seen any case law that would give you any indication of what would be a fair settlement here. There's been some reports this morning about how much how much the settlement figure was. We don't know if that's accurate or not. We do know that there are confidentiality clauses in place between both Mr. Makate and Vodacom, and neither party is entitled to disclose the number. But what's a fair number? You're right. We don't know.
I think the other bit of news that threw a spanner in the works was this claim by Vodacom. Well, do you know what? Makate didn't come up with this idea of Please Call Me in the first place. It was actually MTN. We hear that MTN now and some individuals in there claiming that, yes, indeed, we did come up with the Please Call Me idea. But I guess the MTN element of the story could be regarded as noise, really, because we have a Constitutional Court judgment, don't we?
That's correct. The Constitutional Court has ruled on this, although it's a very interesting angle. Ari Khan, who was a contractor to MTN, has been saying as far back, I think, as 2011, that it was in fact him that came up with the Please Call Me idea, that it wasn't a Vodacom idea. And I've seen the paperwork, he actually filed for the patents, and MTN was granted the patents to a Please Call Me type service. So it certainly seems that MTN has a claim to this, but once again, you're right, the Constitutional Court has ruled, and they're the apex court, and that's where it stands. That's the final judgment.
Let's look at this industry final question to you, Duncan, and look at the hold that Vodacom has onto the public in terms of their services. Here we have the Please Call Me campaign saying we are embarking on a protest action to get contracts cancelled. They want government to sort of snip their relationships with whatever contracts they have with Vodacom, and they want to lobby for sponsored events to actually be ripped off from Vodacom, just given your understanding about the size of this industry and the consumer base of this industry, how much of a task here is it for this campaign to achieve what they want to achieve in terms of their reaction?
It could have some impact. This is a competitive industry. There are 4 major cell phone providers in South Africa, and consumers have a choice. If they don't like the way that Mr. McCarthy has been treated, they can vote with their wallets and they can go to MTN, Telkom or Cell C.
As far as Vodacom is concerned, they're sitting into their offices. I mean, they're insisting that no, they're not coming out. Do you think there might be any other moves on their part, or will they just stay put on that Constitutional Court ruling?
Well, they certainly seem to have drawn a line in the sand. They've made it very clear that this is a final settlement offer to Mr. McCarthy. And from what I've seen so far, talking to Vodacom's management team, it doesn't look like they're going to budge, no?
Right, I'm going to leave it there. Duncan McLeod from Tech Central, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. I'm just going to wipe this camera past you there, Xoli, and just take a look at the scene as it stands. Here you have some of those protesters, some of them wearing ANC T-shirts and, of course, banding the Please Call Me sign on their T-shirts as well. A couple of hundreds, I would imagine about 500 of these protesters. As I said earlier, the number that's placed on this banner is 70 million. That's what they're calling for in terms of what they want Vodacom to pay Nkosana Makate.
All right, Devin Murugan, that figure, just correcting you there, 70 billion. You said there 70 million, but that's not an issue at all. That's Devin Murugan, the business anchor here on ENCA.